Chicken Spinach Artichoke Lasagna, one of my favorite recipes to freeze. So I'm starting with a mixture of onion, garlic, and rosemary. And I'm gonna add about a teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes. And I had a little butter and oil in the skillet. So I'm gonna give this mixture a stir and let it start to release all the incredible flavor. So I'm gonna let this keep cooking, and I'm gonna make the ricotta mixture for the lasagna. So a whole bunch of ricotta, and I'll add some egg yolks and a very generous amount of jarred pesto, and then some parsley, quite a bit. And I'll add some oregano that's chopped really fine, plenty of salt and pepper. So I'm just gonna stir this around and fold it until it's totally mixed together. Okay, this ricotta mixture looks absolutely incredible. There is so much pesto in here. So back to the pot with all the onion and garlic. It is looking great. Oh my goodness. It smells divine. So I'm gonna sprinkle some flour over this mixture. This is going to be the sauce. Now I wanna cook the flour for a good minute, just so it doesn't have that raw flour flavor. In goes the milk and cream. While you stir that veggie mixture that's coated in flour, and then I'm adding heavy cream. Okay, I just need to let this cook for about 5 minutes to thicken. All right, this sauce is absolutely glorious. So I've got a bunch of rotisserie chicken, and it's shredded really fine, and it goes in along with a bunch of Parmesan cheese. And then frozen spinach, I let it thaw, and then I drained all the water out of it. Okay, and then last but not least, some quartered artichoke hearts. This looks like the most incredible spinach artichoke dip you could possibly make. And the chicken just sends it over the top. All righty. Ooh, this looks so good. So I'm gonna turn off the heat, and I'm gonna go ahead and build the lasagna. So I'm using these disposable loaf pans. And first thing I'm gonna do is get about a 1/4 cup of the sauce and put it right into the bottom of the pan, and grab a little bit of this ricotta mixture. Okay, so after you spread the ricotta mixture on the noodle, I have some grated fontina cheese, and I'll just sprinkle it right over. So then I'm gonna roll up the lasagna. All right, so look at that. That is 1 lasagna roll. So I'm gonna do 5 more just like this and fill the pan. Okay, now that the lasagna noodles are built and rolled up, as you may have guessed, I will top them with this glorious chicken spinach artichoke sauce. Be generous, there's a lot of it. All right, and then finally, you've gotta top the whole thing with cheese because this is lasagna. So I'm putting sliced mozzarella on top. I just bake it straight from the freezer at 350 degrees for 40 minutes. Then for stage 2, I remove the foil, put it back in, and bake it for a further 10 minutes. Then when the cheese is melted, I take them out, and that is all there is to it. I'm gonna start with green chili pork stew. Oh, it's so good. It reminds me of New Mexico. I'm actually gonna make a big batch and freeze it as a meal kit alongside tortillas and grated cheese. I've already browned 1 batch of pork. I'm using pork shoulder that I cut into chunks. It's my favorite kind of pork to use for any stew or roast. It's really tough when it's uncooked, and then the longer you cook it, the more it just falls apart and becomes tender. I toss the chunks of pork in a little bit of flour and salt and pepper. The flour just helps develop a nice crust when you're browning it. I'm really searing the heck out of this pork. I want to get it really brown because that's where the flavor comes in. Now I'm gonna make the rest of the stew, and I've got a bunch of chopped onion. This stew cooks for a long time, so you want to start with quite a nice pile. And then I'm also adding carrots. I'm gonna add some garlic And then I have some oregano, and I'll pick off the leaves, and then I'll chop it up and add it in. So the oregano goes in, and then I have some ancho chili powder. A little goes a long way, so I'm gonna add a tablespoon, and that should be good. A little more salt and pepper. Okay, I'll stir all of this so the flavors are mixed together. Okay, I need the veggies to cook for about 5 minutes. So while they do, I'm gonna peel and chop the roasted poblanos. Okay, I got the poblanos chopped. Now I also have a jalapeno pepper, a serrano pepper, and some husked tomatillos. I put all of these right under the broiler for about 5 minutes, tossed them in olive oil first. They all got some little bit of black skin. They're not totally charred like if I had roasted them over an open flame. I'll just chop the tomatillos roughly. All of this is gonna go into the stew and cook low and slow, so you don't have to dice everything too fine. I took out the seeds of the poblano chilies, but I actually left the seeds of the jalapenos and serranos. I may live to regret that. It's gonna make the stew pretty spicy. That's what sour cream is for, right? Okay, I'll give this a stir. All this beautiful browned pork. It makes such a difference to sear the pork before you put it in. If you just put it in raw, you would never get that beautiful caramelized flavor. Then 2½ cups of vegetable broth. And finally, a couple of bay leaves. And I'll get everything stirred. I'll turn the heat down, and I'm gonna let it cook for an hour. Time's up. Let's take a look. Now, the first thing I need to do is fish out the bay leaves. I'm gonna cut a lime in half, and this is a really juicy lime. It's amazing what a difference this little bit of lime juice makes in this stew. And then I chopped some cilantro, about 1/4 cup, and it goes in, and I'm gonna stir this beautiful mixture together. Now, with the stew, I'm freezing some white corn tortillas, and then just a couple of separate containers of grated cheddar cheese. Now I've got to transfer the stew into a foil container. And while I do, let me tell you how this gorgeous meal comes together. So I'll put the pan of frozen stew into a 375-degree oven for 40 minutes, then put in some tortillas wrapped in foil, give everything another 10 minutes, and then take them out. Now it's all about serving up. Everyone gets a big bowl full of the green chili deliciousness with some of the cheddar cheese I froze and thawed, some chopped fresh cilantro, sour cream, a lime wedge, and tortillas. Dinner for 6 could not be easier. Freezer breakfast panini. I'm starting by buttering the bread generously. Now I've already got a batch in the panini maker. I have a skillet of butter, and I want to heat up the ham. I've got a whole bunch of eggs, and I'm adding a generous amount of half and half. Sprinkle in salt and pepper. Okay, the egg mixture is nice and smooth, so I will check on the ham. Now it comes out of the skillet. I'm gonna go ahead and add just a little bit more butter, pour in the egg mixture. Now I'll just let them cook. The eggs are beautifully scrambled, so I'm gonna turn the heat off. Every panini has to have a delicious spread. This one has a base of mayonnaise, sprinkle in a little salt, hot sauce, a nice zip of lime. All right, good to go. I'll grab 2 slices of bread, spread sauce on both pieces, a piece of Monterey Jack, then comes the ham, a good amount of scrambled eggs, a roasted green chili, and the top goes on. Now I'll fold up the foil and just wrap them tightly for the freezer. I'll put the panini on the sheet pan in their foil and bake them at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. My day is off to a great start. Bolognese sauce is hearty and meaty and rich and wonderful, and it's a great thing to make in a slow cooker. However, the whole thing starts in a great big skillet. I just heated it up and added some olive oil, and I'm gonna add a whole bunch of veggies because I'm making a huge batch of Bolognese sauce. Okay, I've got onions, carrots, and celery. And stir these around. The next ingredient to add is garlic. I started with 6 cloves and I'm getting it as fine as I can. I'm putting it in now so it doesn't burn. If I put it in with those onions and carrots and celery, it would have gotten a little bit burned. Okay, I'll stir it in and let the flavors start to go. That smells wonderful. So I'm gonna add a can of tomato paste for that rich, rich tomato flavor. Now it's really hot, so I'm gonna grab the hard stuff, red wine. I'll add a cup. Okay, this looks great. Now I'm just gonna let the wine cook, and it'll take about 3 minutes. The veggies and the tomato paste and the wine is delicious. It is really cooking away. I'm just gonna season it all with some salt and pepper. Give it one final stir. This is cooked as much as I want to cook it. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it into the slow cooker. Oh, it smells so good. I'm gonna put a little more olive oil in the pan because now it's all about the beef. I've got 4 pounds of ground beef, and it goes right in. You can do a combination of beef and sausage if you want. You can just do plain ground pork, ground turkey, just whatever kind of meat you want. Bolognese is very forgiving. And I need to season it too. So salt and pepper, very simple. And then I need to stir and cook the meat completely. It's gonna take about 15 minutes. The beef is all brown, so I'm gonna add probably the weirdest ingredient for the Bolognese, 2 cups of whole milk. This is sort of a traditional thing they do in Italy. I think it's a little bit unusual, but I'm gonna trust the process and add it. The idea is just to add that nice fattiness and also to balance the acidity of the tomatoes. So that is it for the skillet. I'm gonna get the meat mixture into the slow cooker now. Well, that was my workout for the day. Okay, next I'll go in with 2 big cans of crushed tomatoes. And then I've got some herbs to add. Dried basil flakes, some nutmeg, oregano, and thyme, some crushed red pepper flakes. Okay, and I love to add Parmesan rind. Don't ever throw these away. They're so good to add to sauces. Now I will stir it. There is so much good stuff in here. Okay, that looks great. So now the lid goes on, and then I'll set it on low. It'll cook for 6 hours, and it'll be all done. When the sauce has cooled, I pack up the rest for the freezer. I'm gonna make a big load of meatballs. They're all-purpose meatballs. My family loves them, and I keep them in bags in the freezer and then just throw them into whatever sauce I want. Now it starts with 5 pounds of ground beef, and I'll add a cup and a half of breadcrumbs. You can use plain breadcrumbs, seasoned breadcrumbs, panko, anything you have on hand. And then this is a lot of ground beef, so I'll add a good amount of salt and pepper. I'm gonna really season them up. And then of course I love a little spice with pretty much everything I cook. So I'll add some crushed red pepper flakes. Now I also like to add a couple of heaping tablespoons of really grainy mustard. It gives the meatballs such a great flavor. Now I'll splash a little bit of whole milk in, about a half a cup or so. The breadcrumbs will soak it up and it'll give the meatballs just a wonderful moisture. And then I never ever pass up the opportunity to add a good splash of heavy cream. Talk about richness, wow. Doesn't take a lot, a little goes a long way. Now I'm gonna add some green to the mix. I'll grab a bunch of parsley and I'll chop it up. It'll add great color and flavor to the meatballs. I tell you what, freezer food is my life. If we're having a really busy day or I'm running late, I just have to pop it in the oven and we're good to go. Okay, that should be enough parsley. So I'll sprinkle that in. And then I also have 4 eggs, already cracked them, so those go right in. Now that is one beautiful meatball mixture. I'm just gonna go on in with my hands and squish it all together. Sometimes I love to do this. Sometimes I just think, oh, it's a necessary evil. If you used a spoon to mix this together, it would take you approximately 4 months to get it all mixed. Okay, that's about as mixed together as it's gonna get. Now I use a scoop to roll out the meatballs. That way every meatball is about the same size. Just roll it between my hands. This mixture is actually gonna make 125 meatballs. That is a lot. I'll put them on these trays and I'll freeze them briefly before I brown them in a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier that way. Now, the meatballs have frozen for just a little bit, just enough to firm them up, and I'm gonna get them into the pot in batches and start frying them up. The meatballs are fully cooked when they go into the freezer. That way I just whip up a sauce, throw in the cooked meatballs, and as soon as they're warm, it's time to eat. These meatballs could not be more versatile. They basically go with everything. I tell you what, I can just taste all those different sauces I make. Each one is as delicious as the next. One of my favorites is a classic barbecue sauce. It goes so well with the meatballs and is great with stovetop mashed potatoes. And I love a dish of Swedish meatballs served with noodles and a sprinkling of parsley. It'd be hard for me to pick my favorite sauce for these meatballs, but sweet and sour sauce is definitely up there. It's a great sweet, sticky concoction with pineapple juice, sugar, and spicy sauces. I throw in frozen meatballs, some pineapple chunks right at the end, and then serve it up over rice with a sprinkling of sliced green onion. All of those sauces are so quick and easy, and they're absolutely perfect for a busy day. Okay, I got all the meatballs cooked. Now I'm just gonna let them cool down, and then I'll flash freeze them for a little bit, and that'll make it easier to bag them up. These meatballs are gonna make me one popular mama. Sweet and savory breakfast wraps. So I've been scrambling some eggs. First, I cooked some crumbled breakfast sausage, removed it to a plate, and I've been cooking the eggs in the same pan. I just season them with salt and pepper, but they're getting all that flavor from the sausage, so these wraps are gonna be delicious. The eggs look amazing. They're fluffy and just about fully cooked. So just to add a little color, I'm gonna dump in a jar of drained pimentos. All right, the eggs are done. So now I've got all the elements ready and I'm going to assemble the wraps. I've got a flour tortilla, and I'm gonna start by adding cheese. I've got American cheese here, and I'm just gonna overlap 2 slices right in the center of the tortilla. And then I'll use a spoon to scoop on probably 1/3 a cup of the egg mixture. And then this crumbled sausage goes on. It's just getting pretty full. I am going to put a hash brown patty on top. These are frozen hash brown patties, and I just baked them in the oven until they were crisp. So one goes on, you guessed it, maple syrup. I'm gonna drizzle just a small amount over the hash brown patty. You know those breakfasts where you have like French toast or pancakes, scrambled eggs on the pan, and you get everything all mixed up? Well, that's basically what this wrap is all about. Don't knock it till you try it. This is incredible, just having that little hint of sweet. So to roll the wrap, I'm gonna tuck up the edges and then just tuck it all in while I roll. And it doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as you get everything safely tucked inside. This sweet and savory breakfast wrap is ready to go. So I'm gonna build 7 more just like this one, and then I'll fry them on both sides until they're crisp. So that's all 8 wraps made. And the next step is to cook them seal side down on a griddle in melted butter for about a minute. Then when they're golden, I'll flip them over, cook them for another minute on the other side, and when they're deliciously golden on that side too, I'll take them off onto a board. Look at these sweet and savory breakfast wraps. They're basically a glorified burrito. So all you have to do is let them cool, wrap them in parchment, put them in the freezer, and then whenever somebody needs one, you just pop it in the microwave inside the parchment, go 2 minutes, then turn it over, another 2 minutes, and it's ready to eat. Be careful because the insides are very, very hot. I've got 3 big chicken breasts, and I'm gonna cook them in chicken broth, just boil them until they're done. These are bone-in, so they're gonna be extra flavorful as they cook. And I've got 3 chicken thighs. These are gonna cook up just great, and I'm gonna make a chicken pie out of them. Great mix of white meat and dark meat. It's gonna take this chicken about 45 minutes to an hour to cook all the way through. Who doesn't love chicken pie? I swear I've never met a single person who doesn't love it. I'm gonna turn all of that boiled chicken into a perfect chicken pie. I've been chopping up some veggies for the pie, and I'll get them into a skillet with some butter, starting with celery. I've also got some onion and some carrots, and I added a little something to this one that I don't normally use, and that's parsnips. I diced everything really fine because the kids don't really like huge chunks of veggies. I'll take veggies any way I can get them. I need to season the veggies with some salt and pepper. Sprinkle some in. I just need to stir these veggies around for about 3 minutes. The filling for the chicken pie needs to be really thick, so I'm gonna sprinkle in some flour, about 1/3 cup or so, and I'll stir it around and cook it for just a minute or so. I'm changing this chicken pie up from my normal one. I usually use a regular pie pastry whenever I make chicken pie. This time I'm taking a little bit of a shortcut, and I'm gonna top the pie with a sheet of puff pastry. It's looking really good. So now the liquid needs to go into the pan. And by liquid, I mean white wine for starters. I'll pour in about 1/2 cup or so. The flavor of white wine in chicken pie is so divine. It's really subtle, there's not too much in there. Looks really good. So I'm gonna pour in chicken broth. It looks like a lot, but it's gonna thicken up. Some fresh thyme leaves, so as the sauce thickens, it'll take on that yummy thyme flavor. One more veggie right out of the freezer. Got a bag of frozen green beans, and I'm just gonna put them in their frozen state. I usually use frozen peas when I make chicken pot pie, but green beans are a nice change. Now I'm gonna grab some turmeric. I'm adding this for color more than anything else. It does add some nice flavor. It's really golden, and a little goes a long, long way. You don't want to over turmeric anything because you'll wind up with a bright yellow dish. If you just add a little bit, it adds a nice golden tinge, and it just makes whatever you're cooking look that much more delicious. And it worked. I want to dive into this and eat it right now. But I've got one more ingredient to add, and it's probably the most decadent ingredient known to man, heavy cream. Not a lot, just a little. It just does something to this filling. It makes it a little bit thicker, definitely more creamy, definitely more rich. The only thing it needs is the chicken. I'll drop all of this shredded chicken in, and I am really, really stuffing it in there. I like a super meaty chicken pie. And I'll fold it into the sauce. Honestly, you don't even need the crust with this. I could just serve this up in a bowl, call it chicken stew. That filling is perfect. I'm gonna be really careful and go slow. While I do this, let me tell you how I'm gonna finish it up and serve it up tomorrow. An hour before dinner, I'll pull the pie out of the fridge, brush the rim of the dish with an egg wash, put a sheet of thawed puffed pastry on top, press down the edges of the pastry so it sticks to the sides, then egg wash the top too. Then I cook it for an hour at 375, and everyone in my household is gonna fight over that first big spoonful. Look at that crispy pastry on top. And all it needs on the side is a great green salad. If you're looking for a weeknight dinner that everyone is gonna love, you can't get any better than nacho cheese casserole. It's one of those dinners that completely disappears. There is never a crumb left. I'm starting with the sauce for the casserole. I added some vegetable oil to a skillet, and I'm adding some flour. I'm just gonna make a little bit of a roux, and that'll help it to be a nice, thick, rich sauce. I'm gonna whisk it just for a minute until the roux starts to turn a light golden brown. So now I'll add some liquid, 3 cups of low sodium chicken broth. And this was so hot that that roux is already gonna thicken this liquid up. I'm making 2 casseroles out of this deal, so I wanna have a lot of sauce. Now to this mixture, I'm gonna add 2 cans of enchilada sauce. One of them is just a standard can, 10 ounces, and the other one is a large can, 28 ounces. And now I'll stir this up. And I want to give it a little seasoning with half a teaspoon of ground cumin. I don't want it to be too strong, and the flavor of the chips I'm going to use is very strong. So just a little cumin is all I need. Okay, I need to give the sauce a little time to heat and thicken up, so I'll add the meat to a separate skillet. I've got 3 pounds of ground beef, and it goes right in, along with some finely diced onion. Of course, some minced garlic has to show up, and I'll break this all up. I just need to cook the meat until it's brown. And I'm gonna make a cheese mixture for the casserole. Very simple, just a bunch of grated sharp cheddar. And I'm also using some pepper jack cheese. The sauce is done. So I'm gonna pour the sauce into the meat, just make it all one big mixture. First, I'll put a layer of crushed nacho chips into the pans. They each get a layer of the beef mixture. Then comes the cheese, more chips, more beef, even more cheese, a final layer of chips, and you guessed it, more cheese. Now this one's for dinner tonight. Let me tell you how it's gonna play out. I'll cover the pan in foil and bake it at 350 degrees for 25 minutes. Then I'll take off the foil, give it another 15 minutes, then take it out and top it with shredded romaine lettuce, diced Roma tomatoes, some sour cream, sliced black olives, and sliced green onions. Then with all the fixins piled on top, I'll spoon out a big helping and put it on a plate for dinner. How good is that gonna be? And what about this pan, you ask? I'm gonna cover it with foil, and I'll pop it in the freezer, and it'll be all ready for another day. I'm gonna make a big batch of cheese-stuffed pasta shells with tomato sauce. They are very, very popular in my house. Now, I've been grating up a bunch of cheeses, and I'll make the filling for the pasta shells. It starts with a whole bunch of ricotta cheese. I'm actually making 2 pans of shells, one to pop in the freezer and one to take home for dinner tonight. This is a lot of ricotta cheese. Now for some sharper cheese, I've got some grated Parmesan and grated Romano. I also have 2 eggs, and those go right in. I'm just gonna get some basil and parsley together. This is a really great meatless meal. I love it because you can serve the shells with a salad, and that's a great meal in itself. And then some salt and pepper. This is a lot of cheese mixture, so it really needs some seasoning. And then I'll just use my muscles to get this all combined. Now, part of what makes this so easy is that you can use jarred marinara sauce. And I'll just put a little bit in the bottom of the pan, just to have a little foundation of sauce. And now I boiled a whole bunch of jumbo pasta shells. I'll hold it open with my hand and get some of the delicious cheesy filling. And then it goes cheese side down in the sauce. I'm gonna fill up this pan, then I'll do the other one. I'll top the whole thing with more marinara sauce. Just pour it right out of the jar. And that is why jarred marinara sauce is so wonderful. You just crack open the jar and go for it. Now, cheese again. I have a whole bunch of grated mozzarella, and it melts so beautifully over the top of these shells. Now I have some leftover Romano and Parm, and it goes on. Now I'll just cover these with foil and dream about digging into this tonight. So just 25 minutes in a 350-degree oven, and it'll be nice and hot. Everyone gets a big helping of shells. I just love the way the sauce coats the pasta and a little of the cheesy filling peeps out. Yum. Then it just needs some crusty bread, a sprinkle of chopped parsley, and that's dinner. I'm gonna whip up sour cream noodle bake. It's an old-fashioned recipe. It's real meaty and cheesy, and my husband and kids love it. Now I've got 2.5 pounds of ground beef that's all brown. Now normally I would drain off all the fat after this, but there's hardly any fat to drain, so that's convenient for me. Now into the beef, I'll add 2 cans of just regular tomato sauce. Then I'll add a little salt and pepper. And then just to give it a little kick, I'll add some crushed red pepper, not too much. Okay, now I'm gonna let the sauce simmer. Now I have 1 pound of just regular old egg noodles. They should be ready. So I'll just drain them into a bowl. It's a really great layered dish. Really simple, but still lots of things going on. Okay, now I'll just add some creamy stuff to the noodles. First, about 2.5 cups of just regular cottage cheese. And if you think you don't like cottage cheese, don't worry, you won't even know it's in there, I promise. And then I'll add a good cup of sour cream, some salt and pepper. And then part of what makes this so delicious, I add a good amount of green onions. The green onions just add a really nice tang, a really deep flavor. And because the noodles are hot, it sort of melts the creamy mixture. All right, the creamy mixture is totally coating the noodles. So now it's just about assembling it. I'll start with 1/4 of the noodles. I'm doubling the regular recipe, so I have to keep track of the amounts I have. Just throw about 1/4 in there. That looks good. And I'll smooth them out. And then I'll just ladle 1/4 of the sauce over the noodles. The original sour cream noodle bake recipe calls for just combining all the sauce and all the noodles together. But I really like layering it because it keeps the elements separate. And then every bite you get a little bit of cheese, a little bit of creaminess. It's really nice. And then I'll top this layer with some grated sharp cheddar cheese. And I grated this myself. I like the consistency of cheese you grate yourself rather than the pre-grated stuff. Okay, now on to the next layer. Now I'll top the final layer with more cheese. Okay, now these are all assembled. I'm just gonna let them cool and pop them in the freezer, and then they'll be ready to throw in the oven whenever we want them.